So we are back with our Championship Week 5 score predictions. Unfortunately for us, we do have an international break coming up after this week, so not the best. We'll have to make the most out of this weekend's football action, but we got some big games coming up, which I'm excited to get your guys' viewpoint on. So as always, all this weekend's games will be in the description down below, so that you guys can go ahead and make your score predictions. Then if you do manage to get any of them correct, your comment will be included into the next video. At the moment, I think I'm 6-5 up on FIFA in terms of score predictions, so we'll be hoping to continue that trend going into this week. And without any further ado, let's hop into my predictions. So starting out with tonight's game, we see Cardiff going up against Fulham. Now, it's an interesting one. Cardiff, there's not really been all too much consistency in their performances so far. They've been a little bit up and down in terms of the results they've been picking up. In their last 3 matches in the Championship, we've seen them have a draw, win and a loss. Defensively, I'm still not been all too convinced by them, and going up against a side like Fulham, who have been so good going forward so far this season, you'd expect a few goals to be scored in this one. Both sides were knocked out of the Carabao Cup in midweek, although both of them did make changes in fairness to them. Cardiff got knocked out by Luton by 3-0, and Fulham lost against Southampton. For this one, I think because Fulham offer more going forward, I'm edging towards backing them for this game, although they obviously came off the back of a loss in the last game week, losing against Nottingham Forest by 2-1. They did have chances going forward in that game, in fairness, and it wasn't necessarily a disaster of a performance either. For this game, I think I'm just edging towards Fulham to bounce back. I'll go for a 2-1 away victory, and FIFA's going to ruin me for that one. It should be an interesting watch. After that, we then see Bristol City going up against Middlesbrough. Bristol City are one of the most informed sides in the Championship at the moment. They've won their last 3 matches and have played some really good football along the way. One player who is going to be missing for this week, though, is going to be Thomas Callas with a hamstring injury. I think he's going to be out for around 4 to 6 weeks. That really could be a big blow for Bristol City. They've been playing with that 3 at the back system really efficiently lately. They've been working well playing out from the back, so I'm interested to see how his absence will affect the team, because obviously he's a top-class defender. Going up against the Borough side, who haven't been all too convincing so far this season, but they are unbeaten in their last 2, beating Wigan, then drawing against Millwall. But of course, Bristol City are a different calibre to those opposition. You know, Bristol City currently sat 4th in the Championship. I've liked a lot of them so far. Some of the players they've got going forward, I thought they recruited well in the summer. Casey Palmer, I think, is in the top 5 players for creating the most chances so far this season in the league. Benik Afobe seems bang on form. He scored 2 goals in the victory they had over Hull last time out. So I think I'm edging towards the home side, Bristol City, in this one. Probably not as a massive surprise. I'm gonna say that they will win this one by 2-0. I've liked watching Middlesbrough in spells so far, but I'm still yet to see that complete performance from them. I'll say 2-0 Bristol City. FIFA's gonna say it'll be a 0-0 draw. And then we see Birmingham going up against Stoke. 2 sides who haven't had the greatest starts to the season so far. Both sides' performances have been a little bit up and down. If we look at Birmingham first of all, they've had some games where they've been absolutely bullied out of it. You know, against Swansea and Nottingham Forest, they were nowhere to be seen in those games. They looked really poor in them. But in the games they've had at St Andrews, they've put in a couple of decent performances so far. You know, the game against Bristol City, they played some decent football. You just get the impression with Birmingham that they don't really know the best system, the best starting 11 yet, and they're still getting to know a lot of the new players that they brought into the squad. A lot of the same issues that Stoke were having last season have reoccurred for this year as well. There's been a couple of signs at Stoke where you're thinking maybe they'll start to turn their form around. You know, the performance against Derby was actually quite decent, but they followed that up with a disaster show against Preston North End. So I'm not quite sure where Stoke are at the moment. In midweek, of course, they had that dramatic game against Leeds United where they managed to beat them on penalties and knock them out of the Carabao Cup after being smashed by them in the Championship the following few days before. I think if anything, both sides just want a good performance out of this game, and I'm going to say I'll finish as a 1-1 draw. FIFA's going to say it'll be 1-0 Birmingham. Stoke really needs to send their form around sooner rather than later. And then we got Brentford going up against Derby. 2 sides who I was expecting to be pushing around the top 6 this season. Neither of them have particularly got off to the great start. Brentford on 4 points, Derby on 6 points this far into the season. Brentford without a win in their last 3, Derby without a win in their last 4. So it's a good chance this game for either side to turn their fortunes around. I think that in Brentford's last 2 matches, they've had a combined 35 shots, but have only scored 1 goal. Last weekend, we saw them lose 1-0 against Charlton, where they had a flurry of chances going forward, but couldn't quite find the back of that. I think that being clinical in front of goal has really been Brentford's problem so far this season, because they have been creating chances. They just have lacked that sort of killer edge. You know, we're seeing them missing someone like Neil Maupay as that clinical striker for them. Derby County, I think the sooner that Jack Marriott's 100% fit, the better for them, really. In front of goal, sometimes Derby have looked a little bit lacklustre. This far into this season, Martin Wycombe's probably been their biggest threat going forward. And for this game, I think I'm just edging towards Brentford. I feel like they have to turn around this form sooner rather than later, where they create a lot of chances but aren't winning matches. I feel like that's at some point needs to turn around. And for this one, I'll back the home side for a 2-1. FIFA's going to say 2-0 Brentford, but with how inconsistent both have been so far, Derby could easily walk away with something from that. And then the big one this weekend sees Leeds United going up against Swansea City, the top two facing off against each other, both on 13 points, both have played some excellent football this far into the season. I believe that Swansea are the highest scorers in the Football League in all competitions so far. In their last 5 games, they've scored 3 goals or more, so going forward, they're in fine form at this point in time. But Leeds have also played some excellent football, you know. I know they lost in midweek against Stoke on penalties, but the game they had prior to that against Stoke, they absolutely tore them apart going forward. Pablo Hernandez, being the magician he is, picking out some absolutely exquisite passes. So far, I think both teams have been involved in some of the most entertaining games this far into the season, and I think this one's going to be a really fascinating battle. And maybe a few people have overlooked this Swansea this season in terms of some of the quality they have got in that squad. You know, some people have really been performing for them this far into the season, and for this game, I don't think there'll be all too much in it. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. Both sides have shown so far this season that they have got goals, and then FIFA's going to say 2-0 to Leeds. That's a massive game. And then we got Luton going up against Huddersfield. I'm sure that Huddersfield won't want to be in the bottom 3 for the international break, but it's looking more than likely that that will be the case. They're going up against a Luton side who have found their form recently as well. They've scored 6 goals in the last 2 matches and picked up back-to-back wins on the road, obviously. Beating Barnsley 3-1 at the weekend and then winning in the cup against Cardiff when they did make a few changes to that game. Izzy Brown coming in for his first start, and I thought he'd really impressed. And they're going up against a Huddersfield side who haven't really had any sort of direction for this season. I'm still not sure what way they'll go, obviously. They're still without a permanent manager. Their last game against Reading, the 2-0 defeat, it wasn't an awful performance, but there's still not really much creativity going forward for that side. With Luton picking up back-to-back wins on the road though, and with them being back at home for this game, you'd expect them to put it on. Playing through midfield per game, they've been creating a lot more chances than Huddersfield have this far into the season. And for a prediction, I'm going to go with a 2-1 home victory, with FIFA saying it'll be a 1-1 draw. Huddersfield, they need to turn it around sooner rather than later, but I feel like an international break now may actually be a good thing for them. And then we got Millwall going up against Hull. Both sides were knocked out of the cup in midweek after drawing 2-2. Both lost on penalties. Millwall against Oxford and Hull against Preston North End. In the league so far, Millwall have looked decent at home. They've won both matches there at the end so far this season. They're going up against a Hull side who the results haven't necessarily gone for them so far this season, but I can see the process that they're building to. You know, I think that in some games, they maybe have got a little bit unlucky, you know. The game against Blackburn, they missed a penalty. In the game against Bristol City, I didn't think they looked too bad, and I thought that the 3-1 scoreline to Bristol City was a little bit harsh on Hull for how they played for the 90 minutes in that game. I think that eventually things will click for this Hull side, you know. I've seen a gradual process that they are building to, and when they do eventually start taking chances going forward, I don't think they'll be in for a bad season per se, but they are going up against the Millwall side who have seemingly clicked straight away this season. Obviously, putting the game they had against Fulham to the side when they lost 4-0, on the whole, I've been quite impressed with Millwall. I thought that their last game, a 1-1 draw with Middlesbrough, for large parts of that game, they were actually the better side, especially in the first half of that one. And for a prediction, I'm just going to edge towards Millwall. I'm going to say 2-1. FIFA's going to say 2-0 Hull. Hull are a tricky one at the moment. And then we got Forest going up against Preston North End. Now, this one should be a really interesting game of football. Both sides, I think, will be confident going into this game. Forest, of course, after beating Fulham at the weekend, and then following that up with a 3-0 home victory over Derby in the Cup. Preston, so far, we've been looking really good, especially going forward. Only 3 sides have got into double figures for goals scored in the Championship so far, that being the top 2 and Preston North End. Our main goal scoring threat so far into this season has been Daniel Johnson. Playing in that number 10 position, I think he's been very effective for us. Our wingers have been looking good so far this season. Billy Bowden's looked excellent when he's been called upon. Tom Barkhuizen's been causing problems for opponents, and Josh Harrop, who's come back into the first team after recovering from an injury, has looked terrific in his few stints he's had so far this season, so I'm hoping we get to see him a bit at the City Ground. Obviously, Forest have some returning players as well. João Carvalho was back in action for the game they had against Derby in midweek. He actually scored in that game. Both sides have been playing some good football so far this season. With Preston, the only sort of downfall of our season so far is that we have lost both away matches we played so far. Albeit the game against Swansea, we did get a little bit unlucky, but we are yet to get a point on the road so far. I'm hoping this will be the first one of the season, and for prediction, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think that Forest will be the favourites in this game, but Preston lately have been looking good, and with our record at the City Ground being decent over recent years, I'll fancy us for a point. FIFA's also going to agree and say 1-1. Next up, we got Reading going up against Charlton, another tough one to call. 2 very informed sides going up against each other. Charlton are one of 4 clubs yet to lose a match this far into the season. I think the way to describe Charlton so far would just be clinical. When the chances come round, they've taken it. The game they had against Brentford, they only had 1 shot on target, but beat them by 1-0. I think the game they had against Stoke, they had 3 shots on target and scored from each of them. Lyle Taylor and Conor Gallagher have both been excellent for Charlton so far, but but quite an underrated centre-back partnership this far into this season has been Lockyer and Pearce. I think that they've both been really solid for Charlton and have been a large part of their success this far into this season. They're going to have to be on form though, because I've really liked the look of Reading. Obviously with the summer recruitment going on at the club there, they've added a lot more firepower into the squad, but I really like the look of Reading's midfield so far, especially, you know, Ajoria and Swift have been absolutely running games for Reading this far into this season, and it's going to be a tight one, but I'm just going to fancy Reading for this one. I think that Charlton may lose their first game of the season. I'm going to say 2-1 Reading. Thief's going to say 1-0. You never know with Charlton though. They'll probably still pull something out the bag. Sheff Wednesday going up against QPR. Don't see all too much being in this one. Sheff Wednesday have won all their home matches this far into the season. QPR away from home have been a little bit up and down. They've won 1, lost 2 away from home. Wednesday will be wanting to bounce back from what was a pretty poor showing against North End at the weekend. I thought that Wednesday looked a lot better when they made the changes in that game, introducing the likes of Adam Reach, New Hugh and Fernando Forestieri. So I'm interested to see what starting 11 Lee Bullen actually goes for in that game, and whether he does look to make the changes to affect the game. They're going up against the QPR side, who I've on the whole actually fairly liked the look of recently. I thought that the second half performance against Wigan was absolutely excellent. I think they've got quite a few attacking outlets and they can hurt sides from different angles this season, although I am still a little bit unsure about them defensively. For this one, I think I'm just going to back Wednesday with their home record for a slim 1-0 victory. Thief's going to say 2-0. Next up we then got West Brom going up against Blackburn. West Brom, another one of the sides who are yet to lose a match this far into the season. What West Brom really need to do though is start turning some of these draws into wins. They've drawn 3 out of their last 4 championship matches now. Going up against Blackburn, who have been improving their results lately, but one thing that surprised me a little bit with Blackburn is their lack of firepower so far this season. They've only scored 3 goals from their 5 matches in the league so far. After some of the signings they've made, I really thought they'd improve their attacking line, but so far they've not quite been firing on all cylinders. I don't think that Bradley Dack has quite got going for the season yet. I think that he's currently 3rd in the championship for players who have taken the most shots but are yet to score a goal. But on the flip side of that, I would say that Blackburn have been looking much better defensively lately. They've kept 3 clean sheets in their last 3 championship matches, so that'll be a good test against a West Brom side who I think is still working themselves out as the best way to attack teams. For a prediction, I don't see there being all too much in this one either. I'm just going to edge to West Brom. I'll say 2-1 to the home side. And then we've got a big game to finish things off. We've got Wigan going up against Barnsley. Neither side is going to want to be in the relegation zone for the international break, and this will be the deciding factor as to who is sat in the relegation zone. Neither side's been playing particularly well lately. Neither side has won since the opening day of the season. Wigan have lost 4 games in a row. That's the worst run in the championship at the moment, and neither side's really had much to shout about lately. So this fixture will be a really interesting one just to gauge the levels of quality that both sides have got. It feels like it's a massive game for Paul Cook as well, who I think the pressure is mounting on after Wigan had spent quite a bit of money in the transfer window. If he's not able to get the best out of those players sooner rather than later, I see him being put under increasing pressure. I thought that Wigan was slowly starting to turn around their season when they took the lead against QPR and they were looking alright for the first half, but they completely fell away in the second half and lost it 3-1. In fairness to Wigan, looking at the fixtures they've had at the start of the season, it's not been a particularly easy run for them. You know, they have played some sides who I am expecting to be around the top of the championship, but things just haven't clicked for them going forward. I think that Barnsley have looked more of a threat in terms of scoring goals so far. But with Wigan being back at home for this one, I'm just going to back them for a 1-0 home victory. I think they need to rekindle that home form that they had there last season. So I'll just say 1-0 Wigan. Thief is going to say 0-0. That's a big game. But guys, there you have it. There are my score predictions for this weekend's fixtures. So let me know in the comments down below what you think will happen. If all my predictions do come true, then this is how the championship table will be lining up going into the international break. And then on the flip side of that, if all of FIFA's predictions do come true this weekend, then that is what the table will be looking like. So let me know in the comments down below what you think is going to happen in this weekend's fixtures. If you did go on to enjoy the video, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. Make sure you subscribe for a bit of regular championship content. But apart from that, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.